And then if others connect,
Go ahead.
then we'll connect. So I'm going to call to order Woodstock's Planning and Zoning Commission. This is a special meeting for April 1st, 2021. Welcome to April, everybody. And I'll know 7:33 is the time. I'll go through the usual stuff very quick about the virtual meeting, so we have it on the record. We're meeting virtually. All the other provisions that we're required to follow for a meeting, we are, as well as any of the governor's executive orders that pertain to virtual meetings. Ask that people not use the chat feature, which would be good not to use, please. Otherwise, if you can keep yourselves on mute, so that way we don't pick up background sound, although there's not a lot of us on the meeting right now, so that hopefully won't be a problem for us. Oh, let me just click this. Other than that, does anyone have any questions about how we meet virtually? We're experts at it by now. So good. I'm going to go through the roll call, even though I can see you. We just want to make certain it's clear on the record for our audio. So just let me know you're here when I call your name. Joe Adaletta.
Present.
Mark Blackmer. Mark, you're here?
Here.
Yep. Sid Blodgett, I don't see him.
Here. Hi, Jeff. I just need to change the name.
Oh, okay, good. You're here. Excellent.
Yep.
Let me, you got your name change?
Yeah, I'll take care of that right now. Thank you.
Okay, yep, good. Welcome, Sid.
Thank you.
Or Nancy, if I have to call you that until you change your name. Gail Dickinson. I don't see Gail here. I'm just also scrolling through the list to make certain nobody is waiting. Nancy Frazier.
Here.
Jeff Gordon, I'm here. Jeff Marcotte.
Here.
David Morse. I don't see yet. Doug Porter.
Here.
Dwight Reinowitz is not able to be here tonight. And Timothy Young. Okay, and somebody connected under B. Who is that? If you could let us know who you are. If you can hear me, whoever came in.
My name's Brian. I live in Woodstock.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
My name's Brian. I live in Woodstock.
Can you let us know your last name?
Is this a private meeting?
No, this is a public meeting, so we do need to make certain we're identifying people.
Sure.
Just let me know again your name so that way we can have it.
Sure. Brian Linton, Linton.
Okay, welcome. We'll note that. Okay, so we do have a quorum, so I'll note that. And then that actually will take us, I didn't put the Pledge of Allegiance down, but we do have that, so I will, unless there's an objection, we can do the pledge. I did bring the flag again. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the
of
flag.
the United States of
United
America
States of America.
and to the republic
Republic,
for which it stands,
which is
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and
Liberty.
justice for all.
justice for all.
I'll also have to try to get a flag for Connecticut, and if we have an official Woodstock flag. Designation of alternates. Well, looking at the list here, it looks like we would need to, we would be able to seat our two alternates tonight, which is perfect because I've been going in alphabetical order right now. So Doug Porter and Nancy Frazier as alternates. I'll seat you for the meeting, although our only motion tonight likely is just going to be adjournment. But congratulations on being seated. Now, Doug, you have to stay all the 4 or 5 hours we're planning to be here tonight. My chair's report will be very quick. My usual thank yous to all of you and all the commissioners for our meetings we do every month, and to the staff as well for all the work that we know gets done during meetings and in between meetings. So thank you for all of that. Just want to remind you all that we do have our monthly business meeting on April 15th, and the agenda and other stuff will be set next week, and meeting packets will go out. Anybody who wants to pick up their meeting packet at Town Hall is more than welcome to do that. I also want to remind you guys that the state legislature is continuing to be very busy in several commissions, judiciary, I know finance and budget and planning and development. There's at least a dozen major bills that affect zoning in towns in different ways. So I would encourage you to take a look and see what's up with that. I've been following it. I actually was on a panelist on a webinar last night about it with a statewide group to try to let people in various planning and zoning commissions know what's going on with the legislation. So definitely take a check of that. Our state senator, Dan Champagne, actually serves on the planning and development committee. So I know he's been tracking a lot of stuff, but just be aware a lot of potential big changes that the state legislature might do, that if these things do get passed in one fashion or another, would cause us to have to pivot in our work and attend to some things, especially since some changes may actually become effective January 1st. So if you're looking for more info on that, I can certainly get you it, but just want to let you guys know that as the session is continuing to go forward, stay tuned for more stuff that's being worked on. This is our meeting for us to take back up planning. I know we haven't been able to do that in quite some time because we were doing some other projects that we needed to complete, and also with last year the pandemic and us having to shift to Zoom and things that went on with regards to how we had to adjust to do our work. We actually haven't been able to have a formal planning meeting since the early part of 2020. And in fact, our project on agriculture, the last time we really were able to take that up was before there were some other things we had to finalize. Was going back to August of 2019 as far as a meeting just dedicated to that. And that's why I wanted to have those meeting minutes sent out to you, and we posted it on the town website, so that way you can see. What I will do is I'll just, I looked through my entire, I actually have 3 massive files on ag during all the time I've been on the commission. And based upon where we left off with our work, I can just synthesize it in a few bullet points just to kind of let you know where we had stopped and what we were kind of looking to do, and kind of what we're thinking of taking back up. So we're always looking at agricultural stuff, and we've been doing a lot of work over the years to certainly be of help to the farming community and others who are involved in agriculture. And what we were really looking to do was first and foremost to be updating our regulations to allow various things and be thinking ahead to various things as local agriculture evolves. I do know some parts of our regulations, for example, farm stores, don't even permit certain things to be done. And a lot of towns have been doing it. In fact, since we last really delved into this, I've looked to see what a lot of towns have done, and there's actually a lot of existing regulations that a lot of towns have worked through, which are very good to see. And we had looked at some of them that some towns were in process, like Stafford and a few other places, but they've actually finalized some of their work. And so one of the things I would suggest is that we could actually get some copies of some of that out. We can work on that so we can see what some other towns have done, so we don't necessarily have to completely reinvent the wheel. But some of the things we had talked about and wanted to look into, and this is not in any particular order, it's just how they fell when I was taking the notes based upon what we were doing, is one was wanting to better define and better understanding of clearer definitions about agricultural related businesses, non-agricultural businesses or events that occur on agricultural land or in an agricultural building, and also how that is different from retail businesses. And there is quite a bit of overlap depending upon what happens with the farm store. That was one of the things that was on our list that we wanted to better define and see, some of those definitions that we don't have. Another one was looking into what other places were doing and what we might want to consider with regards to farm stores, for example, certain percentages of what we would consider agriculture versus non-agriculture, local or state versus what is non-state agriculture, such as coming in from California or things like that. I know when Dexter Young was on the commission, he had provided us a document, I have it here somewhere, from Planning for Agriculture. It actually came from Connecticut Conference of Municipalities and the American Farmland Trust, and there's also some stuff that the state has. And that was one of the things we wanted to look into as well, as far as understanding some definitions of farm stores versus non-farm stores, that just the regular retail commercial ventures. Another thing that was on our list that we wanted to look into was what we would do or not do for different types of permitting processes or as of right allowable or permissible things, such as we certainly already have a number of things as of right for agriculture and farming. Certainly farm stands we have some definitions about, and we wanted to look to see if we needed to update anything relative to our regulations on that. The other I mentioned was we wanted to look into what to do about farm stores, and our regulations clearly need to be updated to deal with that. And then also we had talked about not other ag businesses or events that are done that are clearly founded in ag, and what we would do relative to any type of permitting process for that. We weren't thinking at the time of special permits for that, but we were thinking of what type of permitting process is there relative to the scope and duration of some of these events. And actually a number of towns have been defining that and developing that in their regulations. And then the last but not least on the list that I have was looking at when an ag operation, be it a farm or whatever, wants to do something that is clearly not agriculture, start holding weddings or things like that, but they're doing it on the ag property or in a barn or some other ag building. And we wanted to look into that as well relative to defining that, understanding it better, what permitting process there is. And again, a lot of different towns I've looked at recently have been fleshing that out. Actually, a lot of towns have actually very similar wording, almost, sharing that type of information and again, not reinventing the wheel. Those were all the things, including agritourism, that I had on our list going back to our action items that we were going to take back up. And again, we weren't able to. So those are the different ones. I'm happy to hear from the rest of you on the commission, if you think we need to be adding more to that list. If those items on a list are something you want us to take back up where we kind of have left off, which would be behind the scenes, would be working on trying to get you some more information so we can start fleshing some of this stuff out in further discussions, and can also show you what some other towns are doing. And if there's anything additional you think we should be putting on that list that you feel we need to update or we just haven't addressed fully in the regulations. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Anybody, Joe?
Yeah, I'll jump in and just say that the list that you recited very quickly is a fairly extensive list, and a lot of it's related, similar topics. So I think it's certainly a good area to start pursuing. I think we also may want to look at how our regulations impact other economic development in the area. Do we need to have better defined mixed use zones so that it's easy in certain parts of town, which are almost acting like mixed-use areas to be easily compatible or allow new businesses to come in under a mixed-use kind of guideline, living residents with a business within the same building, something like that. But I also want to comment that, a lot of the topics you spoke about related to agriculture, I think are very important. I certainly feel that we want to do as much as we can to help agriculture in Woodstock, but I also want to keep in mind that there are other businesses in town that don't necessarily enjoy some of the benefits that a business described as agriculture would enjoy. Property tax relief, certain state benefits if you're described as an agricultural business, but you have business ventures that can compete with other businesses in town that are strictly businesses. And by way of example, I'll use event venues that are built as event venues on non-farm land. So those businesses don't get to have the same tax advantages as event locations on farms. And I just want to make sure, as we talk about these things, we look at the equitableness of what the regulations do and help both parts of the businesses in our town.
And I agree with you, Joe, and we had spent some time talking about that. In fact, looking at what some towns have been doing, they've actually have been looking into how do you deal with, retail businesses that are selling things that some farm stores might be that really isn't necessarily agriculture, versus a farm might want to sell mugs with its name on it. But when a farm store might starts getting into selling non-ag items that come from other places, how much does that tip into retail that, a non-ag business like commercial has to go through a very different permitting process. And it's been interesting when I've looked over the past couple of weeks at what some of the towns have been doing. Some towns have been fleshing that out in more detail to better define that. And some towns also have actually looked to see, well, how does that actually affect any type of taxing that towns do versus, ag versus clearly non-ag. And kind of been looking at that. That's can be somewhat tricky, but there have been a number of towns that have been fleshing that out in regulations, or one town actually did it in, I forget where it was out west in the state, did it in an ordinance to better define it. So,
well, I think if you can find those and send that, that's a great starting point for considering how to be fair and equitable to all the businesses in town. And now that I see Tina on joining the group, I thought maybe hi Tina. I thought maybe we'd ask Tina and Delia for their input on what we might want to tackle based on their interaction with applicants and questions or misunderstandings that applicants have when they come into see Tina or Delia about whatever project they're looking at doing. Is there some clarity that could be introduced into the regulations? I'm not talking about the one-off kind of things, but if they've seen a trend in, this is the same question over and over again, maybe that's something we can do in our regulations to make it easier for our townspeople and for our town officials.
And that's a good point, because we've actually spending a lot of time over the years doing just that. Clarifying things, streamlining certain processes. And actually, when you talk, Joe, about mixed uses, that is on our strategic plan, that when we updated it earlier this year, we wanted to definitely look at mixed uses because we recognize that is an area that we really would like to broaden more. So I have that very much on our list of items.
Can I ask Tina and Delia if they have anything that jumps to their mind about things that they see and hear?
Tina, do you have anything?
Yes, I apologize for being late. I had another meeting. So I missed the early part of the discussion, but I think the biggest thing is clarifying maybe the home occupation and having another option for you have your, the agricultural uses and, for businesses. I think we need another piece to that puzzle, because it's either special permit or home occupation or farm. I think we need another option for people.
You're talking, Tina, about when there's already a home occupation permitted and then they exceed the scope of their home occupation. The only other option then really is to either you have to move to a special permit or you then have to reapply for, we do have a gap in there, and that is actually something on our strategic plan we wanted to delve into about better defining some of that.
Yes, and I think there, with the farm stores that we have, there's some gray area and inconsistencies that really need to be clarified. So that's my opinion for today. Delia may have some other things.
Delia, did you have something additional? I know we've touched upon a number of things, but is there something additional?
Yes, for many years, I've been hearing about how the commission would like to do something about the business turnover when you have a grandfathered business turning over. And so that's been talked about for many, many years. And I think mixed uses would be a great idea, especially in South Woodstock. So those two things would be, I think, very important to address.
Can you
We
describe
actually did touch upon, we did look to make some changes about change of use, about how we would do the permitting process. We did make some changes and then we left off with some further proposals, but that is something that I would advocate for, that we take another look at to see how do we do the permitting, but we've actually streamlined that through the zoning permits, but there were some additional things. I can pull that up, I forget which meeting it was, several or so years ago, that we had looked more into it and then stopped, but we did make some changes.
Delia, could you describe a little bit what that first topic was, the grandfathered business
Well,
use?
Every time we have a grandfathered business property and a new business wants to go in, we call them non-residential zoning permits.
Oh, all
I've been
right.
hearing for probably the whole time I've worked in Woodstock about how there was an interest in revisiting that.
So these are not compliant grandfathered
And I
locations?
didn't say they were not compliant. I said that their grandfather, which is different.
Yeah.
They're allowed to continue, which doesn't mean they're not complying. They're allowed to continue because they existed before zoning. So it doesn't make them, it's not like they're in violation. They're allowed to continue. I wouldn't call them the same thing as not complying.
Okay, but I guess I'm not understanding what the issue is. If they're continuing to operate?
No, when they're
Is it
turning over,
application?
someone sells it and new business goes in. We have several properties in town where there's turnover. Some of them are
Okay.
turning over rather frequently,
Mhm.
but the issue, there's many times when businesses come in to go into one of these properties, I have to explain why they're here. And sometimes there'll be a commission member who wants to know why they can't just turn over. And I'm not saying that it should be that simple, but it comes up a lot.
Okay,
And
But are you talking, Delia, about non-conforming, legally non-conforming?
no.
Is that what you're talking about? Just businesses in general that are here and a new business moves
well,
in?
they're properties that were non-residential before you had zoning. So you've allowed them to continue non-residential use. And then when they close or they sell to a new person and the new person wants to go in, put a business in, we've been, for several years, have been calling that a non-residential zoning permit. So
And is that for a different business than what was there before the sale? Or is it like let's say a real
Doesn't
florist to a
necessarily-
florist?
Right, it doesn't necessarily have to be a sale. It could be the owner's renting it out to someone different.
Okay,
Or maybe the
right.
person who's there decides to do a different business. It doesn't really matter who the people are. The zoning doesn't have to do with the people. It has to
No.
do with the use.
The use,
So
right.
if the use is the same as a new person going in and the use is similar, are you saying that maybe the process should be more simple and not have to go to the commission? I'm not sure what you're.
Well, Delia, that's what
Meaning?
you and I previously proposed to the commission. We actually did look to it, we did raise discussion when we were streamlining the zoning permit process. And one of the things that was a proposal, I know you and I had worked on that some time ago with a draft that came out to the commission about, would some of this come to the commission as a non-residential zoning permit? One business sells to somebody else and they want to bring in a business, or would some of this be streamlined and go through staff? At the time, the commission decided that that it was going to keep it, the non-residential zoning permit process as is, and look to get back to that topic. But there was a draft proposal. I still have it in my files to see about would there be some of these change of uses that are very simple and straightforward. Would they have to come to us to get the non-residential zoning permit, or could they go to, say, Tina in her office and get it? And how would we define the different criteria? And there was a draft proposal.
That's what I'm talking about. When you said go back to reconsider that, that's what I'm talking about.
Nancy?
Yeah, I just want to ask a quick, maybe clarifying and add a little bit. So if a non-residential use, if you're selling, but the people want to run the same business, you're saying right now they'd have to go to the commission, as opposed to looking at that as a non-conforming that's continued to be a non-conforming in the same type of non-conforming. So these people would still have to come to the commission as opposed to having staff look at it. That's what we're doing right now.
Yes,
Right now,
everything
all
comes,
applications come in.
everything
I
comes
just
to you.
I just want to
Okay.
share a little bit of background for the new members on the commission. When I started working in Woodstock in 2006, it was kind of like a little bit of the Wild West. When you had a business go into a property that already had a business, there was no review. Nothing happened. That's like the opposite end of the spectrum from like complete strict control to no control.
Sure.
What I think would be a good balance would be in the middle somewhere. So
Yeah,
part of the problem with not regulating it is that the zoning officer is expected to enforce the regulations. So if a new business goes in, but there was no record of what uses have been on that property, and you're relying on what might be in the assessor's office, well, sometimes the assessors, and especially when you get a new assessor, they tend to go through their records a bit, and they might throw things out that maybe they don't have a use for, but the zoning officer might have a use for. So it's
Sure.
hard to do a job as a zoning enforcement officer when you don't have records, and yet you're expected to enforce the regulations. And if there's a change from use 1 to use 2, but you don't have a record, maybe that same use was there, a couple of tenants ago.
sure.
So it's hard to enforce when you don't keep records.
No,
So
I
it's a good idea
understand.
to have the record, but I don't know that we need to
I
make
completely
the process
understand
difficult.
that. I completely understand that. I guess what my concern is, and I don't know if Rich Roberts is on the call, but I think, and I could be misquoting the law, but I'm pretty sure if you have a non-conforming and it continues in the same non-conforming, the case law is pretty heavy on that non-conforming use, if it's continuous and it's the same, is allowed.
I'm not saying it's not allowed. What I'm saying is that we have to.
Delia,
have a
Delia,
record
I'm
of
not
it.
Delia, just one person at a time. So let me let Nancy go.
Yeah,
And
no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that you are. I think actually we're saying the same thing, very, very similar. But all I'm pointing out is if we're not doing it that way, that I agree, we seriously need to look at that.
Right. And again, we had touched upon this some years ago, and there was a proposal drafted, and we had enacted some of it when we streamlined the zoning permit, but then we stopped and said, well, we want to, delve more into it. But it's been something that's been kind of on our list to get back to. But we haven't looked at that in quite some time. I have to pull out another folder where I know I have that info. I forget when was the last year we even looked at that. But it is something that I know it comes up, and we keep saying we want to look at it. And so it definitely is something I've kept on a kind of our to-do list. But it sounds like this is certainly, we still want to look at it. So what we can do is I'll find where that draft was. I think, again, I forget which year, but there was a draft that had been worked on and that we had seen, just some to help facilitate the work. I know I have it, and I can get that, and I can get that out to you to show you kind of what we were looking at before, and hopefully that can then kickstart us taking this up further and fleshing it out more. Because it certainly sounds like I know there's a need to look at it, but it certainly sounds like there's an interest as well to want to look further into it. So we'll get that document out. I made a note to myself to find it, and I'll send it off, and it can be from town hall, can be sent out to everybody. So, and then did anyone have anything else relative to ag or Anything otherwise for us to take back up, or anything specific to what we've been talking about? Additional items that we wanted to see? I know from an ag point of view, we have in the past worked with the Ag Commission, the Woodstock Business Association, the Farm Bureau. You know, we can certainly be liaisoning and communicating with them, and I can certainly reach out. We've been working well with them in the past on issues, so we can be inclusive and we can collaborate and really get some good feedback and good discussion. So I'm assuming we'll still want to include them as well, and we certainly, you know, will do that. But did anyone have any other items from the commission as far as?
Is there state regulations as far as, you know, on the farm stores versus a retail store? You know, the state regulations defining the two of them?
Not necessarily, no, other than for whatever tax purposes. I know this was looked into and Dexter had given us some information in 2019 about it. Otherwise, a lot of the state documents that we had received, and we can certainly look to see if there's anything new, weren't regulations or rules. They were more saying these are things that, you know, consider doing or consider looking into, or kind of like a best practices thing. And those were the documents that the state had and other organizations had. But we can certainly look to see if there's anything updated in that regard. But a lot of the stuff that was rules were more for, you know, running a business in the state from a tax point of view, which would be separate from what, you know, what we would be doing. Is there anything further on the idea list? Because we'll certainly pull more stuff together and try to get some things, some documents out then based upon the running list. Okay.
Well, it looks like if you have that, can put the list together, maybe our next meeting, we can talk about what priority we want to address those different topic as, or maybe combine a few of them. The farm stand versus farm store kind of discussion, the home occupation, the grandfathered uses on non-residential permits. Those sound like some high-level topics we could be tackling at these meetings.
Yes, and the other we have to keep in mind is we're going to have to get back to reviewing affordable housing.
Yeah.
And Delia brought this up. This is still stuff that we have to do, and depending upon at least 3 major bills that have come out of Planning and Development Committee, depending upon what gets passed in the House and Senate, will actually add even more to the work we would have to do regarding our affordable housing review. So that will be a definite topic we've identified that we have to deal with as well. You know, separate from all of this other stuff.
And I'll suggest maybe one more topic to put on the bottom of the list to just keep us thinking that we have to do it, is the plan of conservation and development. I know it's a few years off, but experience has shown that it seems to take a few years to pull it together. So just as a little reminder to us that it's something on our future agenda to look at the current plan of conservation and development and read it and think about things in the next year or so.
One of the nice things, Joe, about the plan of conservation development, that when we're doing work on mixed uses, when we're doing work on home occupations, when we're doing work on ag, anything we have to do for affordable housing, that stuff, when we update, that's stuff that right then and there is work for the POCD.
Exactly.
Which is good. And if we need to spend money to do certain things on this, as far as, you know, working with others or whatever we do, and we spent some money on planning for the POCD separate from printing, we have money separately in an account that was approved at a prior town meeting that we can use just for purposes like this that doesn't come out necessarily of our straight budget.
And that's helpful to do townwide surveys to get citizens' input and opinions about things. That could help fund that. But as I say, that's a bit down the road.
So are you suggesting that to do townwide surveys, that you're going to go door to door throughout the town? And then
we'll go arm in arm, Jeff, you and me. We'll go knocking on doors.
I'm afraid what will happen when people see us, Deb, Might get
Well,
some
I'll let you
firsthand
knock and
practice.
introduce yourself first.
So, but no, it is very important that, you know, that you mention it because the POCD is a big project and we're going to have to update it. But again, all these different things will go into that update. So that's nice. We don't,
Yep.
you know, we'll make certain that we, and actually what I'll do is if anybody doesn't have their copy of the latest POCD, then let Tina know. I think we still have, well, I know we have an electronic version of it online. I don't know if we still have printed versions. So remember we printed a whole bunch and we got a box. Maybe it's somewhere.
And the latest was the June 1st, 2015. So
Yep.
every 10 years, which, you know, we're a few years away from it, but as I say, it takes a little while to pull together.
And one of the talks that's been at Planning and Development Committee in the state legislature is that if some of the bills are going to require towns to pivot to deal heavily with focusing on affordable housing issues, there's been some talk about how that would there have to be extensions to like the POCD. Remember there was extensions prior granted by the state because of certain things.
Yep.
So, but I wouldn't want to wait. I agree. These are things that are all good for the POCD and we should be moving forward. So anybody who doesn't have their POCD, it's online at the website, or let Tina know and we can see about trying to find a copy, you know, for you. And then we can, you know, go from there in that regard. That's certainly a big list, you know, that we have, but a really good one. And I know we have these things on our strategic plan. As far as getting back to what was mentioned, Joe, you mentioned it, which is important is, you know, I think we can for our, you know, next planning meeting, see how we want to tackle it. Since I know, you know, a big list, we're not going to be able to tackle it in one fell swoop. But certainly, you know, with this stuff, what are the, you know, let's distill and think about what would be the items on our triage list that we definitely want to be looking at. And I'll dig up some of the stuff that I know we've already had some documents on and other stuff, and then we can get stuff out to you guys so we can start fleshing more of that out with some of these topics. Anybody else on the commission had any other thoughts or ideas relative to the list or these items? And then hopefully when we have our next planning meeting, we'll hopefully get some further input then from, you know, others, you know, the business community, the ag community, that type of stuff. And then we can start working further on fleshing, you know, things out. And we can, you know, none of this is going to happen overnight, but I think it's nice getting back to these planning discussions.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay. Is there anything else then? Or anything else relative to our plan of how to implement it? I'll take that we're fine with the list and moving for our, you know, I'm assuming we still want to keep the first Thursday of every month as our planning meetings. That's what we had talked about, as opposed to trying to put other business on. Just keep it focused on planning.
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay. The other thing as well is if we happen to have a regular monthly business meeting the third Thursday that is light, for example, if we wanted, we could also be taking up some of these topics to keep things going, unless people want kind of a break and just have a short meeting on our business meeting. But I do look at that as well, as far as if we don't have a lot, what do we do for that meeting? So since we don't want to be having 3 meetings a month, we used to do that for a while. Which is a lot. Okay, so our next business meeting is in 2 weeks. Our next planning meeting is whenever that first Thursday in May is. That May 6th, I think. If I'm thinking of the calendar in my head, we'll mark that down. So.
You are right. It is May 6th.
Hey, I got something right today. That's excellent. Never too late in the day to get something right.
That's not too good to hear from a doctor, Jeff.
Well, I didn't say it had anything to do with medical. Could have been completely non-medical. I am home. I'm not at in the office. So, but anything else? Okay. And then I know Delia, for our next planning meeting, you'll have an award-winning AV PowerPoint presentation with music and sound effects for us, all prepared. Good. So, okay. Well, if there isn't anything else from a planning point of view tonight.
You might not come home from paradise.
What? Did you say something, Jeff?
I said with that, I said Delia might not come home from paradise if you make her do that.
We don't want to scare Delia off. So, okay, well then, if that is where we are, then we'll move forward with it. And stay tuned for some things coming out. I'll also see, since we're going to have a meeting packet come out next week, we may use that vehicle for some of these additional documents to get out to you. So the sooner we can get some of these extra stuff out to you from a planning point of view, the better. So we'll start working on that behind the scenes. So otherwise, if there isn't anything else from our planning discussion, that takes us to our only vote tonight, which would be a motion to adjourn. Is there someone who is brave enough to make it?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, we have a brave soul who wants to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, another brave soul.
Sid looked like he wanted to second, but he was waiting.
I was thinking about it.
Well, you know, Sid, we'll have a meeting in 2 weeks. If you want, I'll recognize you to make a motion to adjourn so you don't feel left out if you want.
Well, let me practice first.
Okay, so I'll go through quickly the rolls so we just have it on the record. Joe Adaletta,
Aye.
Mark Blackmer,
Aye.
Sid Blodgett,
Uh,
Nancy Frazier,
Aye.
Jeff Gordon. I don't need to think about it. I'll say aye. Jeff Marcotte,
Aye.
Doug Porter. Oh, did we lose Doug?
I think he left.
Okay, so I'll just have to mark that down. I believe that passes unanimously. So we are adjourned at 8:15. Thank you, everybody.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Same to you. Enjoy the holidays. Stay safe.
Yep.
And Tina, I don't know if Delia knocked off, but Tina, I'll follow up with you and Delia about some of the documents and the stuff about, I know we've talked about home occupations and the other stuff, and we'll try to pull some documents and stuff together.
Yep, that would be great.
We'll work on that. Okay.
All right.
How do I gotta stop the recording. Stop